Yep.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right. Well, a few minutes after 4, welcome everybody to the Apex Transit Advisory Committee special meeting. Just a quick reminder for everyone, the proceedings are recorded and live streamed. So for the purposes of minutes, if everyone could state their names prior to making any comments, asking questions, anything like that. All right, so welcome. Thanks to staff for putting together this special meeting. We know the last thing everyone wants is another meeting, and this was important to especially our new members of the committee. So we greatly appreciate the efforts that went into putting this together. And thanks for everybody on the committee for coming. So with that, I think we'll move on to agenda item number 2 with Ashley Gentry from the clerk's office.
Right. Hello, good evening. Ashley Gentry, Deputy Town Clerk. So today, we are going to formally adopt the meeting schedule calendar. Back in July, I brought this forward to you guys, but it was never formally adopted. So we're just going to simply do that today. And I also I went ahead and created since October's passed, or the 24-25 calendar. I went ahead and did the 25-26 fiscal year, so you guys can go ahead and put that on your calendar. So we will do both adoptions. There'll be 2 separate motions tonight for fiscal year 24-25 and 25-26.
Actually, could I have a copy of the 25?
I'm sorry, give you a copy?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Look, they're all right here in my hand. That's why. I made copies. I never gave it to you. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I got it.
You did?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't finish handing them out. Everybody else got one? Yeah, okay. Okay. So if you just want to review that for a second, it is open for discussion. I will remind you that all meetings are held on the second Wednesday of every quarter, which is every 3 months, beginning at 4 p.m. at Apex Town Hall, council chambers, unless otherwise specified. Agendas are available on the town's website the Wednesday prior to each meeting. All meetings are now live streamed in person. And if you are not able to attend a meeting, please notify your staff liaison, which is Katie and Shannon, and also the clerk's office. Remember, these meetings are, attendance is very important since these are quarterly.
All right, looks like Gay has a question.
Yeah, I think either I'm missing something or something's missing. Gay Williams, the 24-25 and goes through July of 25. The 25-26 includes October in the 25 year, but it's not reflected. So my question is October in the 25 calendar year or the 26? I mean,
It's fiscal year.
Fiscal year?
It's fiscal year, yeah. June,
Okay,
July.
so
So if you go like this, basically.
So it should go July through June,
Mhm.
but because the next month has a meeting in July, we included July. So it should be July 24 through July 25, and then the new calendar has July 25, same date,
see,
July 26.
okay, so this year then is reflecting a calendar year, whereas this is calling that fiscal
Yeah.
year. That's what's,
That's correct, yeah.
okay. Okay, all good.
Any more questions? Yes.
Nick Bryant. My concern is always reflecting around that first week in July. It being a low turnout. That's all, just a concern.
We can propose another date. We can also do that going into the new year as well when schedules, more schedules, or we can propose another date.
Would it would it be crazy to consider those July dates at our April meeting?
And what, sorry, didn't hear you.
Consider our July date at our April meeting.
Oh,
It would make sense.
Adopt it as it is. This is my suggestion.
That's fine.
Adopt it as it is and then potentially change it in April.
unless other folks need to plan further ahead because of vacations.
I mean, and that's why I don't want to make a decision now on it.
Yeah, I have no idea. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you all can adopt it, you know, both calendars as they are, and then if you need to change it, you can. Just keep in mind that the reason we're trying to get so many dates out ahead of you is because space is filling up quickly. And so we try to go ahead and have rooms and spaces reserved. So, you know, in April, you know, you can choose to change the July meeting. And, you know, if we need to look at making a space modification, then we can do that then too.
Good to know.
I'm happy to make the motion. Do you want me to do it as one or two?
What you prefer?
I would prefer to.
Done. Nick Bryant here to make a motion to approve fiscal year 24-25 and 25-26 as is.
Linda Barrett, second.
All those in favor?
I
Aye. No opposed? Any motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, Katie. Ready?
What's that public comment? There you go.
So one of the things that we heard in the over meetings was a desire to kind of foster discussion around transit in general and have a better idea of impacts specifically for our newer members. And so, as you know, the point of this meeting is really to help facilitate that. But I thought we would start with kind of an overview presentation that I'm hoping not to take too long with, but just kind of step out. Where have we come from and where are we right now with transit? And then hopefully that'll feed into the discussion to go with that.
Yep.
So I did some fun digging around the internet last week to kind of get a sense of the more historic transit in town. And as you all know, APEX is on a rail line, and the depot downtown, which I'm very familiar with, was the train station, which was built in 1914. There were other train stations previous to this, but not as nice, and I believe one of them burned down. And yeah, so this is the train station that's been here since 14. The rail line itself was built somewhere between the 1850s and the 1870s. I just couldn't nail down the date. And Apex was a stop. The image on the right is from 1916. And the, you know, the 1934, there were only 4 stops at the Apex Union Depot. And passenger rail was discontinued in 1959. There was service that went through Apex, and that service in 1971 became Amtrak routes. So the Silver Star actually still runs through Apex, and you'll see that in the morning sometimes, stopping your commute probably. But it is basically still the same line that's been operating for plus years. So all this is just to say, we used to have passenger rail service in town. But really up until that point, Apex didn't really have regular public bus transit service until around the year 2001, when Go Triangle, which was known as Triangle Transit Authority at the time, started Route 311, which cursor works here, but is the line that comes down 55. Oh, you that. There we go. 55 to Apex. And we also had the 302, which went between Raleigh and RCP and stopped at Pine Plaza Drive. Which until very recently was still stopped. So. And then, actually, it's hard to see, but this is a 302 route. It actually had quite a bit of service on it. So you don't have to see all the times, but it was still a short route, but quite a few. That was, pretty similar to it. I did want to kind of give you a little tidbit here that it's harder to see on the screen here, but there's something missing from this map that might influence the success of the 311 in 3 years.
Well, tell us what is on there. Is that 64 and is that 55 going north?
Yeah, 540.
Okay, and 40.
540.
540 not being.
Yeah.
And then see for what 2014.
Yeah.
So in 2006, the 302 was actually split into 2 routes, one of which became the 310, going between Pine Plaza Drive and RTP, and one of which became the 305, going between Apex and downtown Raleigh. Both of those still exist today, but have been modified. And they had pretty similar commute-only trips. In 2002, Apex had its, as part of its transportation plan update, established a transit plan map. But then here's another question: what's missing from this transit plan? That's really hard to tell. It's easier to look up, right? But
No train.
There's no bus train in Apex shown on the map. Yeah, there's corridors shown that are mostly surrounding rail lines. And then 55 is shown as a potential transit corridor, but there's no actual lines shown. This is a regional transportation plan map from Campo's regional transportation plan. I believe this is from 2008. You'll notice there's a lot of rail transit shown. So light rail transit shown potentially between Chapel Hill, Durham, and Raleigh. Light rail shown potentially from Apex to Cary, and a whole lot of other stuff. It's not none of which has been.
And what year was that? You said?
2008.
Oh, wait.
And then in 2011, Apex updated its transportation plan again. And you see the beginning of mobility hubs shown, as well as potential light rail line coming through town and showing the existing Go Triangle service. Okay, so that was like what I call historic transit information for the town, stuff that happened before the Wake Transit Plan. So in 2016, the local transit planning changes in town with the passage of the Wake Transit Plan. And this table is not very readable, but what it's showing is like all this transit relevant stuff happens after that plan was approved, because now all of a sudden there's funding available, there's a lot more regional discussions surrounding the ability to provide transit. So the Wake Transit Investment Strategy was a countywide recommended in November 2016, not by a landslide, but by a majority. And it included a new half-cent sales tax in the county, among a few other revenue sources. And this strategy was not just a funding source, it also was accompanied by a regional countywide transit plan. And so together they kind of formed this new vision for improved and expanded transit in Wake County. The Wake Transit Plan had 4 big moves, so 4 big goals that kind of anchored it. Connect the region, really meaning establish a rail line in our region, commuter rail line, as well as enhancing access to RTP, RDU, and West. Connecting all Wake County communities, meaning expanding service so that all the incorporated towns in the county had some sort of transit access. Creating frequent reliable urban mobility, so building BRT lines and providing more frequent and expanded bus service in more urban areas, and then enhancing access to transit, which included the development of the community funding area program, which is our main funding source, and just additional funding for things like bus stop improvements, etc. And just to give you a little bit bigger breakdown of what the revenue sources are for the Wake Transit program. There's half-cent sales tax, which is the bulk of it. There's also a $7 Wake Transit Plan vehicle registration tax. You might not even know that today. A $3 vehicle registration fee tax that you also probably don't realize you pay, but they go into slightly different buckets, but they're basically the same thing. And then Go Triangle actually has been enabled for many years to collect a vehicle rental tax. Part of that also goes forward. Although that might not remain forever. And then in terms of the dollar amount that have been raised by this is kind of staggering. So basically, between 2017, when we started collecting these funds, and 2023, this announcement, we had raised almost $748 million in funding just for transit. And after 2024, budgeted another $135 million. For 12. Some Wake Transit funded regional road improvements in our regions include improvements to the Triangle Route 305. So basically expanding both the number of trips on the service as well as extending the route itself down to Holly Springs. There's sort of a piecemeal improvement going with this route that should be complete by FY27 to all day, 7-day service with trips every half hour during the peak and hourly. The Go Carry ACX is a route that began in January 2021 that was funded through the Wake Transit program. Right now, just Monday through Friday commuters only, but fairly soon, thinking about it, a year or so, it will actually be replaced by the Go Carry Route 12, which is now only a 7-day local route here. And then the Go Triangle Route 311 was not originally a Wake Transit route, it existed before the Wake Transit Plan. But it's kind of had a rough history the past few years. In March of 2020, it was actually suspended. It has been suspended ever since, mainly due to the pandemic and the fact that it already had low ridership. And then also the Triangle had trouble bringing it back because then they had an operator crisis. They didn't have enough drivers to bring back all bunch of services that have been. And so eventually they just kind of removed the route from it. But it is planned to come back into service. Go Triangle is currently working through the plan so that they can bus stop along Route 311.
311 is the one that comes down 55.
Yeah, it was the connection. And so kind of post Wake Transit plans, Apex kept planning, and in the advanced Apex transportation plan, we now have this transit plan map that shows potential routes, that shows existing service and what we can do in the future. It's a good way to coordinate our plan, transit plans, not only internally, but with our partners as well through the region. And it's kind of a living document that helps guide things. And it kind of, yeah, has kept evolving since then. There were some questions that came back before the meeting about like how did Go Apex Route 1 get to be, and this is kind of part of that story. So along with the advanced Apex planning process, Go Carrier is also in the process through a project called the Western Wave Housing Operations Analysis, which is looking at for new opportunities in the Cary, Morrisville, Apex area for transit expansion. And the town and Cary worked together to kind of identify the possibility for a local circulator route. Apex, and you can kind of see there's like a nascent Go Apex Route 1 starting to form in the COA, but it's not the final route. So that followed with the Apex Circulator Study, which Jan could talk length about, which really solidified the service model for what would become Go Apex Route 1. This was completed in 2020. I believe the town actually got CFA funding to help support this study. Yeah. And it went through things like what is the final rounding going to be, where the bus stop's going to be, what does the public think about the service? What days would they be more likely to ride? What fare did the town charge? Things like that. And several of these, we're getting into the territory with like the TAC members who were there at the time and helped with it. And then, okay, I think I just look forward to info on funding. So in addition to the Wake Transit funding, we also, of course, have to our local match for funding. We do have a motor vehicle registration tax that the town is allowed to leverage as an extra $5 on top of the base fee that only be used for transit improvements, and that is state enabled, which the town began utilizing or enacted in 2021 when the circulator study was going on. And the town basically knew, okay, we got to get ready for this. So we have to sort of dedicated funding training for basically anything that's not funded through this funding is coming from the town's general budget funds that comes from most of sources, but mostly. Okay, so skipping forward, this whole time we're working through Go Apex launch preparations. I was not here until basically almost the launch period, so this is where I started to know a little bit more about what's going on. But the operating project was approved by the CFA program, as well as bus stop installation project was approved by the CFA program for funding in FY21. Initially, I think the town wanted to start service at the beginning of FY22, but everything takes longer than we think it's going to, and we actually launched service at the very beginning-ish of FY23, which is like 30th, 2022. And those are just some pictures of the ribbon cutting we had, which was really fun. I know Nick was there, not sure anyone else could make it, because it was in the middle of the day, but it was just an exciting time for us to, finally celebrate after so much preparation. And I just want to do a quick operations overview / review for Go Apex. So I think you all got ride guides in your welcome packets, but you'll be able to see from that we have 45 bus stops. We operate currently 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday to 10 p.m. The fixed route service is operated by Go Carry. We have a 1 vehicle, 1 trip, 1 hour model right now. So the service is operated with 1 vehicle at a time. And we have a turnkey contract where we just pay an hourly fee once a month to the carriers to provide everything required to operate the service, except for all the administrative stuff. We also have a separate service agreement that's counties and transportation service to operate the Go Apex door-to-door their transit service that are required. And we also mostly pay an hourly fee to them, but we also have an administrative fee to pay because they also manage the eligibility to get paid for application and process for the customers. And just examples of the kinds of things we had to do to get the bus stops ready for installation. So we had to put in a bunch of ADA landing pads. And I tried to make this like a cool animation. We did that in 38 different locations around town to get the bus stops ADA accessible. And we continue to work towards more bus stop improvements. Some other stuff we've done, this is not Wake Transit funded, but the town did do a project last year, so between July and December 12 bus stops, landing pads, and the area around them had artists had design paint on them by local artists. Help bring attention to the bus stops and just bring something positive to the town as people wait for the bus. And then these are things that we'll probably be talking about more in this committee, but of course we have the transit prioritization that is going on right now. And just to plug that we will be starting our townwide comprehensive plan update pretty soon, so early 2025. Probably go through 2026, but there will be an opportunity for transit plan amendments, updates, just transit visioning discussions, more of the kind of long range planning that Shannon will be leading, and just we want to hear inputs from the discussion that we will updates about that each month. So that was my overview. If you want to do questions, or you want to wait for discussion.
Yeah, so especially for our newer members, she just covered a ton of history pretty quickly. So
Decades.
anything jump out at you as or things you want clarity on at this point?
It was really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It was great to see it all run through in one place.
So one of the things that I think that was kind of not lost, but just in the high level summary, I don't think we really touched on the level of work and discussion and public input that went into the development of our current circulator route 1 and where those stops are. I mean, and Nick and Linda, you were participating in all of those discussions, so you can provide some color here too in terms of the deliberation over where the stops were going to go, the timing of the route. And I think it would be helpful to kind of for the new members to get an understanding of the deliberative process that took place and how we arrived at ultimately with what became Route 1.
It was the colder time.
Yeah.
Deliberating and talking through logistics.
I would say, seeing it from its infancy, once we came up that we were gonna do a circulator, of course, the cost of the buses, that was always an issue. And they have more than one bus. Are we gonna hire somebody to run it like we do with Go Carry, or are we gonna facilitate it otherwise? But once we got through all the weeds of it, I don't know, the funnest part is trying to figure out where the stops should be. Whether or not that be for housing, commuter, hospitals, just getting people shopping around town, whether, am I trying to say? Basically retail spaces, whether it was downtown or Beaver Creek or Walmart. Those are obviously the three largest ones. Those were the really interesting dialogues for me.
And I think we were able to cover most of the important areas of town. I mean, the one that jumps out that I think we still need to work on is probably the library. And there were also some changes that took place shortly after starting that service. The bus didn't always stop right out in front of the senior center. It was one of those things that kind of after the fact, we were like, well, maybe we should have put it right in front of the senior center. So, the town was awesome in terms of taking the input that came from this committee and putting it into action. And I think they were also awesome in keeping us on the rails, so to speak, when we were talking through where the stops needed to go and maybe where they shouldn't go and all of those kinds of discussions. So do you guys have any other questions for?
One of the things I raised was the high school. When I've ridden the bus a couple of times and I've noticed a lot of young people on the bus and a little elderly people, kind of the both ends of the spectrum, the age spectrum there. I'm just wondering if was discussion about trying to serve that. I mean, I don't know how well it'd be serviced in the morning, but I would think in the afternoon, maybe, high school kids would ride it. It seems like physically to get a bus in there and do all kinds of stuff seems kind of hard, but I was just wondering if that was ever.
It's one of our largest ridership demographics is the middle and high school age kids.
Yeah, and it was the same discussion around like having the library in there. Those were the high school, even friendship. Like all of those are on our list, but we had to whittle it down in order to get a route that was going to work within an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious what your discussions were about the frequency, right? Because I know we talked a lot about frequency in the last meeting. How did you settle on an hour?
I think it was kind of a balance of like a cost balance type of situation. And Shannon, Katie, and others feel free to elaborate there.
Yeah, I mean, so we worked with Go Carry to develop the circulator study. So they were kind of our consultants for that study and provided a lot of guidance, as transit experts. We didn't have Katie. And so it was really looking at what's a good starting point and, the first foray into transit for the town. So balancing costs with what would actually be usable for people. And we did talk about the high school. Things do change along the way. So
Sure.
We were supposed to have something called the Holly Springs Express, which has taken a different shape since that time, as well as expanded service on Go Triangle Route 305. And that Go Triangle Route 305 goes down Laura Duncan right by the high school. That was supposed to the all-day service at the same time that we started Route 1, and it was delayed multiple years. It is all day now, though, as of August. So, the problem is they've also brought back fares, so we'll see, kind of what happens with that. It may be an area that we still want to serve, and we'll kind of be figuring that out for the next several phases of planning. And then in regard to the library, US 64, at the same time, we were working on the US 64 project with NCDOT, which is supposed to include a grade separated crossing of US 64 so that Shepherd's Vineyard can go directly across. And that would be reasonable at that time for Route 305 to also serve the library. It doesn't now. So our intent or thinking was that those two kind of key areas would be served by Route 305. And since we're trying to fit the route within a 1 hour schedule, we focused on 55 corridor and key commercial areas with the first local route.
Yes.
Ridership.
Seems like a good route. It's everything it should, it seems like.
Was that
I don't
on
think we-
vacation?
In that time frame, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we knew at the time that we'd have so many students riding. We could probably tell that until,
Very little of our discussion centered around that younger demographic. We've kind of,
There was some specific outreach to them in the beginning.
in the beginning,
Yeah.
Is it, do we know if they're all getting off at skate park, or are they, is it
Can you,
pretty common?
we've never looked at the
Drop off places.
demographic ridership data can you get it by stop?
We can't, we can only probably have kind of regions. But I've noticed in just the limited rides they do, it's really all over.
Oh, really?
There's quite a few downtown, also going to Community Commons, it's quite a big destination for them. There's one kid that I think works at Publix that I've seen ride all the
Okay.
time, but they all, and so
That's great.
I've seen them kids get on Ginger Road. You know, that's great.
It helps being free, probably, for kids.
and that was a town council decision. It wasn't what we had originally proposed in the circulator study, and town council said, we need this first route to be free.
It was, we want people to ride it, and we knew that would be a stumbling block to have a fare associated. And it was the amount raised was small, and we're like, eh.
Not worth it. Okay.
Well, yeah, and like getting on and off, it makes it faster too. So
That's
that
true.
was the consideration, is that just the
It
overhead
allowed-
of that.
It allowed a significant, if I remember, expansion of that 1 hour loop when we realized we didn't have that time delay related to the fare exchange.
Oh, because it would add time, okay.
Yeah, and just to add some theory. It's also helped with that agreement with them, because they said they haven't even said they needed a fare box, during that time. So it would have been another added expense for us to be the only ones collecting fares. And basically paying them to collect fares for us.
How many municipalities does Cary provide for? Just the three? Morrisville, Apex, and Cary? Okay. And I assume Morrisville is free as well.
Believe it is.
Any other questions or discussion points for Katie on context discussion?
Katie, one thing you didn't mention is how the changes in the plans over time have affected what we're doing. For example, the light rail that was depicted. My recollection from the depot discussion was that the light rail can have more frequent stops, but commuter rail, which is kind of what we're going to now, is fewer. We only get like one in town versus two. And so the maps had to change as a result. I assume the buses, I'm not sure how that's changed over time as far as buses versus trains or how many buses, but it seems like the plans, the regional plans affected our plans over time.
I think I mean, my personal observation is that the region was like really optimistic about having rail service since the 1990s. And it just hasn't. And so I think at least in places, and so that's one factor, but then also just the change in commuting patterns that we've been seeing, make, you know, an RTP based, you know, rail service attractive, but, or just a regular commute rail service less attractive because people are looking for that money. But yeah, there's definitely a shift more towards bus transit instead of rail transit. And Raleigh has been incredibly successful moving their BRT projects forward. And I really think that's probably going to be the future of transit in our region, at least in the next 20 years. We'll probably be bus rapid transit. That might even influence our future plans too for our long range plan. I don't know yet, but
Can you just define bus rapid transit and how that's different from, you know, our route that we're doing here?
yeah, so there's really a long list of kind of distinguishing factors. What makes a regular bus route and a bus rapid transit route. Some of the hallmarks are has to be very frequent service, like 10-minute frequencies in rush hour, maybe 15-minute off-peak frequencies. It preferably has platform level boardings from like almost like rail kind of station platforms where people can walk and roll things on and off the bus easily. You also often see them high capacity with like articulate buses. The two buses stuck together. You often see them with their own lane or guideway, so that they're not sharing traffic with cars, although there's quite, in the US at least, there's quite a variation that you see city to city with that. Because of roadway capacity. And then there's just other premium features that you often find with them. They have limited stops that help speed up the service, so you don't see a stop necessarily every quarter mile. You might see them every half mile associated with a major destination. You might see off bus fare collection machines, and so you don't actually have to pay money inside the vehicle. You pay before you board, and stuff like that. So it's just like an enhanced service that's meant to move people faster through urban areas. And it's really been growing.
And so currently in our area, bus rapid transit really is kind of just starting. Like the only thing I could think of would be like the bus use of the shoulders on some of the routes to Raleigh and things like that. Is there any other bus rapid transit service like things happening?
Yeah, so there's the 4 in Raleigh that are being planned right now. The Newbern Avenue, I believe, I'm not sure if they've broken ground. I think they have broken ground on the Newbern Avenue BRT, which goes from downtown Raleigh all the way up to Wakeman. Wakeman, the big Wakeman, Newbern. Chapel Hill Transit is also in the process of converting their NS route into BRT. That is the route that goes to MLK, which is called Airport Road in Chapel Hill. And those are the only ones I know of. I don't know if Durham has been there yet, but they're probably in the planning process, I'm guessing, because everyone.
Thank you.
Are those dedicated guideways or are those mostly graded?
So I think it's a mix, and oftentimes you'll see like a combination of part of the route is its own guideway, part of the route is the mixed traffic. They might have something called right turn and bus only lane. So it's usually a bus only lane, but they'll can combine it with the right turn lane to get into the bus lane is to turn right. But you can't just follow the bus through. Oh, another thing I forgot about that DOT often features is transit signal prioritization. So all the transit traffic signals along the route will be programmed to let the bus either preempt them to turn green when they approach, or they can keep them green if they're already green when the bus is in service. That's another piece of it. People love.
You want just to explore what's happening outside of Apex with Wake Transit funding, there's an online tool called waketransittracker.com. And you can it's a map and you can choose turn on bus rapid transit and everything else off. And you can just kind of explore and see like where the investments are happening. And it shows all of the bus rapid transit lines and what phase they're in, like construction or study. So that just might be something interesting to look at.
Okay. We're running a little behind our timing on the agenda. So if you don't mind, Katie, we'll move ahead to our advisory committee recap.
Yeah, and you've already covered about half of it.
Awesome.
Just in the past few minutes. So this is less detailed than I was originally hoping, but I think that's a good thing, takes some time. So just to give a recap to you all, what's been going on with the talk in the past 6 years, 7 years. There was a transit focus group identified for the advanced Apex transit plan, which I think kind of turned into the transit advisory committee. So the first TAC meeting happened, I think, a little bit after that focus group. This is what I'm from looking at documents. In February 2017, and I saw that Nick and Andy were there, as well as Joanna, Angela, and Shannon. But it wasn't quite formalized yet. Over the next couple of years, a few more people were added on to the group. Stuart, Kurt, and Amanda joined in 2018. And Linda, I had you joining in 2020, but it might have been earlier. Yes, I think. And the group wasn't actually formalized with bylaws and everything until 2020. During that time, the group, my reading of the previous meeting summary, really focused on how do we bring transit to Apex? What should we do? What service models should we be looking at? That sort of thing, which was also at the same time, this time we're looking through yeah.
The Western Wake Comprehensive Operations Analysis.
Yeah. So it really seemed like 2021 we're focused on the circulator study, service model, everything that you all talked about. As well as Shannon recalled, there was a lot of work to develop your ADA paratransit policy, which is a document we also on our page that you can look. And then, 2022, 2023 was more here for getting ready for the actual Apex launch. And then, bus stop sidewalk project and develop right along. We also had the senior center bus stop discussion, so a few changes made to the one after. 2024 forward, focus more forward, transformation study and issues. And these meetings are expanding out of time. This, a jogging memories, you all.
Does, most of them good. Any questions about any of the committee activities? Anything for our new members? Okay.
Just a comment, I remember a lot of those activities being maybe in this room, somewhere in this building. You had a plan set up and let the public come in and comment.
Those were probably the, what was the Advance Apex? Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to say Go Apex. I don't know why.
And lots of maps set up at festivals and things, so where you can come up and see what's planned and so forth. So it was much appreciated.
Right, so next agenda item is really kind of the meat of the working orientation. Katie, do you want to speak briefly about just like kind of a reminder of the current role of the advisory committee?
Yeah, and I'm gonna bounce around a little bit on this, but should have pulled up. We actually have a bylaws for the Transit Advisory Committee that are available on the website that speak to this, and I can pull them up. And for the sure. I believe it's something along the lines of review and provide recommendation to planning board and town. There might be a secondary one about discussing and providing feedback.
Yeah, so the responsibilities, I'm assuming this is from the bylaws, it's just on our webpage. Review transit plans and services and provide recommendations regarding revisions and or approval. Make recommendations regarding local transit plans, policies, capital improvements, service changes to the mayor and town council. And provide information to the mayor and town council regarding transit customer experience and stakeholder opinions and needs.
And we do have an opportunity coming up, which is that the clerk's office is going to kind of review the roles of the boards and committees. So now is actually a good time to talk about what you all want the role of the tax to be. And
So, my experience with this committee is that the work that we did in conjunction with the staff here at the town was, and the feedback that came from that was taken very seriously. And first of all, I greatly appreciate that just on a personal level. And I think that, people that care about the town that they live in really like it when they're given the opportunity to participate and provide feedback, and then they see that being carried through in action. And so that is definitely greatly appreciated. And just from my perspective, the work that you asked us to do as a committee while we were looking at the maps and talking through the stops and the pros and cons of different service models and frequencies and all of those different discussions that we had, what struck me was the broad spectrum of perspectives that were brought to the table during those discussions. And I feel like our current Route 1 is a really awesome example of how that ultimate consensus was put into action. And it's my hope that, as a committee, we're afforded the opportunity to continue in that role going forward. Nick, Linda, Patrick, Gay, any other comments about the transit committee's role in the work that we do?
Has anything changed? I know, we talked last time, just as an example about, you guys used to work in a room and work together. Now we're in the council chambers and the feeling's a little bit different. I mean, that's not my point about the location, but has anything changed that you like, you dislike about how the group's working together or with the town?
No, not that I can think of. I do share your preference for an arrangement more like this, where we can see each other and have more of a face-to-face discussion rather than kind of all sitting and facing out. I think for the type of discussions that we have and the type of work that we do as a committee, it seems to work better that way. That being said, I don't think it's a showstopper if logistically it just works best if we're in that type of setting. That's just not speaking for the committee here, just speaking for me personally. So if you have different perspectives about that, please, now would be a great time to share it.
I'm indifferent. I don't think what we've done over the past few years has changed at all in the new setup. I just think it's formality and the town is asking. But I can appreciate what you're saying.
Yep.
To piggyback, what Andy said, y'all are so organized and professional. And so when everything comes out, you know what things are for reporting out information on. It's not a vote. This is some of the plans that are coming through, and these are some, and then these are the items that we want you to look at ahead of time so that you know that this is going to be discussion, and then it gives us the opportunity to have great discussion.
Mhm.
So it's very clear of those expectations, which is great. And they explain why things are, because of grant funding or because of ADA laws or whatever it is. It's great, robust discussion, and they're always good to share those details in all that discussions.
And I can't think of a single time where I was wanting for information or didn't get a response to a question before, during, after, or between meetings or anything like that. So certainly appreciate that.
Say probably the biggest transition that I'll see going forward. Again, being here since its infancy, we kind of had a roadmap of what we were expected that we were going to be doing. That was creating Route 1. Now we're kind of dialed back, got Route 1 in place. When we find new funding, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is council going to ask us to provide a Route 2, or are we going to say it's time for Route 2 and see what they have to say? So that's really moving forward. That's what I see. I'm not sure if we're kind of just in a holding pattern and taking on everything that's going on regionally and hoping to collaborate, or whether or not Route 2 will be a bigger discussion in the short term.
It's a great transition into the individual and group priorities discussion, I think. So prior to the meeting, there were some questions circulated for our new committee members and the current committee members. There was question 1, we were asked to submit kind of our perspectives Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, I did get some responses on that and just basically posted them up here. So
Okay.
folks who, you were the ones who gave the comment and you'd like to speak to it, please feel free. Or anyone can bring up anything else.
We already kind of addressed mine. So the third one.
The first two were mine. So I was just wondering, you know, when you join a group new with a team that's been together a long time, you've hit roadblocks along the way. You've had some lessons learned. And I just wanted to try to pick at those a little bit to understand. You know, you guys have worked together a lot, and now you've got half the group who's coming in all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and what, you know, what can we do? It does feel like, as you reflected earlier, that as a town, we've shifted from the go, let's get Route 1 done, and it's done, which is great, to a little bit more of a incremental mode, if I could put it that way. But any roadblocks that have been hit, and things you tried to do, you answered some of that. Andy, as you talked about, you heard recommendations taken seriously and that sort of thing. And that's good.
I know that, you know, funding discussions were always interesting. Especially when we're talking about different types of services and the pros and cons of those. And then when we saw the costs of some of those, it was very clear that we weren't
Not feasible.
big enough for those kinds of things. You know, I think efforts like this probably are often impeded by, you know, not getting grants or funding that they've applied for from, you know, federal or state or county sources. And Shannon and her team have been, at least during the life of this committee, very effective at getting most or all of that funding that was applied for. I think there were a couple here or there that were not granted, but
Yeah.
not a lot.
Until this last cycle, really, of the community funding area program. Our funding that we've been able to get is mostly come from the Wave Transit Community Funding Area program. And I won't get into the details, but a federal funding source called LAP. And we've been successful with every request until this last round. We asked for additional funding for staff support, and funding for a local match for the mobility hub project that we're working on for the future passenger rail. And neither one was granted through the community funding area program. And the response was mostly, the steering committee that made their recommendations wasn't sure that those projects were eligible for community funding area funds. And they were starting a program management plan update to really look again at what types of projects would be funded. And that has hit a lot of snags along the way that we're working through. But I think that at this point, we've been able to do what we said we were going to do. Things have taken longer than we wanted them to across the board, which is pretty typical. But just when you're dealing with construction projects, kind of the way it is.
I think at the tactical level, we did have some roadblocks with some of the bus stops, if I remember correctly. The cost of doing the improvements necessary to make a particular stop location ADA compliant or prohibitive.
So you would just shift.
I think that's ultimately what we ended up doing in a couple of circumstances. So-
I think there are always a roadblocks. And to Andy's point, we've been able to work through them very quickly and efficiently with, of course, the leadership of staff.
Right.
And I guess just listening to the conversation, one thing I didn't think about, Katie and I were talking pre-meeting. One of the reasons that we wanted to have a transit advisory committee locally is to help guide our conversations with the group that we're involved with, the Wake Transit Advisory Committee. So that we have a little bit more support and direction from the Citizen Advisory Board about how we should, what should we push for? And so that has been helpful over time. So it's not, sometimes it's, supporting policy direction at the regional level, or, us really pushing for things with this community funding area program I mentioned that might not be visible on the ground, but it's how we get our funding, it's how we get regional service. So that kind of backing has been working out.
The political climate, I think Katie mentioned you're starting to take some money from the general fund for things. I mean, in general being received. I'm not trying to open up any kind of can of worms, but I was just wondering, I mean, are we fighting for things, or is it like, well, it's pretty good?
I would say that we have some strong advocacy on the town council for matters involving transit. Brett, you want to speak to that at all?
The vote for going back to Route 1 was not unanimous. I'll say that. But it passed. I think it was 4-1. I mean, if you lived here long enough, you've seen the campaigns. There'll be another one next year. Transit does come up sometimes negatively when people, they talk about the empty buses. So that's always kind of an underlying thing as far as some people don't see the value in it, and so it's an easy thing to scapegoat. I think that's not just Apex, but nationally as well sometimes. I mean, usually it's bigger projects than just a bus, but that's where we are here. But the current council, I think it would be a unanimous vote. I know it would be a unanimous vote now with the current council. I think we're always like that discussion of the going back to Route 1. One of the things that was mentioned was cost per rider, and the different scenarios had different values for that. And I was just like, let's try to get the most riders at the least amount of cost that we can. And that led to, I think, the fair, free discussion, as well as having it on Saturdays, I think was a discussion. We said yes to that, but not Sundays at the time, because that was going to be, we thought, the lowest day of the week. I'm not sure that's the case. In hindsight, maybe people are working there, taking it every day, and they would like a Sunday. But their support right now, I think council is kind of annoyed at how long it's taken as well for some stuff, frankly. I think COVID hurt, because I think we were going to start that bus up sooner if COVID hadn't hit. Maybe that was fine because nobody would ride the bus during that time. But yeah, I personally, I think I'm a big advocate, and I think I've suggested to Arno Zegerman be the next person on this as liaison to this next time. I actually invited him to this meeting. I thought he would be helpful to hear this history. But yeah, we're all kind of advocates and excited about it, and want expansion of the routes, want expansion of the frequency, how that can go, and the process by which that would happen, I think, is a question. And we're pushing hard for the county to do a little better on their part as far as funding. And I've been a part of the Wake Transit Plan and committee, and I'm kind of advocating as much as I can to expand the community part of that grant, and to make more regional routes for us in Apex. And I think the county commissioners seem like they're on board to go with this plan as well, as far as I can tell. And we're meeting with one of them on Thursday to kind of talk about some of the roadblocks we've hit and how they can do better potentially. So, yeah. Thank you.
That's helpful. Thanks.
So it looks like someone had a question about what lessons learned with our existing.
That was mine. I think you've shared
Okay.
some of that. discussion.
And then Patrick, you said yours was the third question and.
Actually, mine was third and fourth, and you've covered everything.
Okay, great.
Can
Another
I ask
thing-
a question real quick? Kind of.
Yeah, I have something to add to what I just said, but sure.
As well. With the community funding and the funding that the town has received for transit, obviously. Do you think that we have we're getting our fair share? Or
No.
is that a discussion? Okay. Thank you.
And I've asked the staff to come up with numbers to help to prove that point, I think, as to how much we've paid as a community into the sales tax thing and how much we've gotten back. And it's wildly out of whack.
Lopsided to, Raleigh has more numbers. Is it lopsided towards Raleigh, or are they busy funding other smaller projects to try and get everybody on the same train? You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we did an analysis on this, which I can share in more detail maybe at the next meeting, if you're interested, but basically the CFAs collectively have paid in about 225 million at 748. But we've only gotten back about 11 million.
Less than half.
Like
Less than 5%.
Less than 5%.
Oh, less than, how much did we pay?
225.
Oh, 220.
Collectively, what's this
Oh, you said
EFA?
25.
Everything but Raleigh and Cary, basically.
Yeah, basically, there's 11, really 10 communities that are all part of the CFA. So
Oh, okay.
things like Marina, Springs, the Forest, Pine Hill, and, so collectively, we've paid in about 225 million. That you got back about.
Wow. That's.
Yeah, I wanted that number because I wanted to, when they gave any heartburn about the increasing the community funding area, I'd be like, you're being ridiculous. And here's why, with some numbers. I haven't said in that tone to them yet, but I'm going to if I feel like they're going to push back. But the reality is transit demand is light in all those areas too. And even though there's a matching, a 50-50 matching for the projects, only us and Morrisville, I think, have opted in. So I think there's, they could probably argue, oh, you guys are getting your fair share because they're not even doing it when we're paying half. So besides Apex and Morrisville. So that's kind of the optics. And I think that other communities have transit I'm guessing has come up in their elections and their meetings, and they've just come in saying this is a waste of money. We're not gonna contribute. Does that answer your question?
It's a waste of money until it's provided. The service.
That's how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of, I have maybe other questions, but we need to.
We've got a little under 15
Well,
minutes
Can
left.
I add a little thing to what I said about the politics or about the council position? One of the things I think I mentioned it to the committee before is I've also really liked the fact that having the Go Apex Route 1 on the map has led to other things that I think are positive. One being we've had some land use map changes that have reflected the proximity to transit that have led to things getting built, or at least in the plans of getting built, that we probably would have had a less intense use. But if we can kind of have intense uses where they make sense, I think it's good for everybody. Also, some of these projects that connect like sidewalks to the transit stops, I like them because they're connecting sidewalks to houses too and neighborhoods. So it's a way to channel investment into the places that maybe need it anyway, but then we have this extra pot of funding potentially, I guess, or category of funding, as well as an impetus to make these improvements. I've really enjoyed that.
I guess that was securing low-income housing.
Yeah, affordable housing is a great one too.
Okay.
And if we had if the one where the post office, beside the post office, that one wouldn't currently have a transit score because of 311 going away, but it does because of Go Apex Route 1 being nearby, I think. I'm not sure that would affect their, or will affect their funding going forward, but it's,
I think they have to have all day service within 2 years of.
oh, so 311 was never gonna do that, or never,
Right.
okay, so it was only because of the Go Apex Route 1, okay. So, yeah, getting, and what they're talking about is, there's a 4% low income tax credit that they get, kind of, it's pretty easy-ish to get, and there's a 9% that's harder and can often make or break a project, and the 9% is what you qualify for. One of the scoring things is proximity to transit.
It also helps bring in corporations, but that's another discussion.
Well, that's a story about the region. If we're ever gonna
Yeah.
drive like Charlotte or Atlanta, if we don't have better transit, but
I
that's
don't
it.
think everyone here wants to thrive.
Okay.
Atlanta.
You mean, if you haven't read that,
Very
if you haven't read that, the light rail in Charlotte, it's pretty nice, yeah, I'd say.
Charlotte's the difference.
We've got just about 10 minutes left. I know there were a few other questions circulated to the committee. These were questions for the returning members. I think we've covered the first two. We currently sit cost per boarding. I think at last check, we had just dipped below $30 per boarding for the first time in the life of Go Apex Route 1, just to give you perspective of what that operational cost is.
Am I crazy that it was down to 26?
So it's it might have dipped down like 1 month that low,
Okay.
but then it's up here.
Okay.
And kind of pops back up again.
So the moral of that story is ridership. And this goes back to what Brett was saying, and really to your question about roadblocks or potential inhibitors to the continued operation or expansion of the service is the optics of the quote unquote empty buses, right? And so if we can work to expand ridership, preferably significantly, then a lot of those arguments are diminished. So I view that as one of the greatest threats to this service long term is managing that public perception and the ability to manage ridership and by extension cost per boarding.
Okay.
Bullet 3 there. Linda, Nick, that one was not mine. Is that one of yours?
That's fine, just making sure you've ridden the bus and talked with the driver. I think it's great to talk with the bus and ask questions and the driver, because that's been really helpful. That was really helpful for me when the bus route started, just getting comments. And then, of course, we've done a survey since then, so looking back to the minutes to see what the survey results were, because we did get comments that were, having to ride the bus for an hour, you get with the board where it lets you out and how long you have to take. So those were discussions we had ahead of time, and we knew we would get feedback on it. But we know the logistics behind all that, so.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Has there been any kind of survey of non-riders? One thing I've noticed since joining the committee, I've talked to people about it, and there's just a lack of public knowledge about, what Route 1's all about and where it's all headed. So is there any kind of public outreach program?
So was a transit prioritization study that was pretty heavily advertised by the town, and that surveyed on the bus riders. And then there was just a general survey for the public available on the town website that captured those non-riders. I'm glad you brought up outreach, because that's one of the discussions I had for the next part of the conversation, which was, going back to the whole ridership discussion. How can we as a committee, what can we do to maybe engage some influencers from our biggest demographics, younger school age ridership, and our senior riders, and try to engage them in some way to help us increase ridership for that service. So that's something to think about. And if you're taking notes, maybe something that we'd want to put on the agenda for the next meeting to talk through. And Nick was the last bullet here. Yours.
That's mine too.
Oh, okay.
Just going back and reading through 4 minutes agendas discussion, because a lot in there. Sort of like I said before, y'all too, is that part of these organized, planning and so.
Right. So then we had some other questions we were going to just kind of tee up for discussion, right?
Yeah. I think you can still read everything. These were what we received from email. When we discussed current transit services, and then the other one was improved transit service. Two more questions.
So I'd be interested in hearing from our new members. What do you think Apex is doing right?
Mine's the second one. That, it seems like a well-planned route, and the times I've ridden it's always been on time. I mean, I haven't ridden that much, but and there's some places on that route that don't let us up to staying on time. And so I thought it does a pretty good job in that respect.
Okay.
What is on time in your head? I'm just curious.
Time,
Huh?
in terms of,
Yeah, like what is late? Is
How many
late a
minutes
minute
you make?
late, or is, I'm just
well,
curious.
in my view, 5-10 minutes.
Okay, fine.
And I think that's what the on-time percentage is based on, right? It's plus minus 5 minutes.
It's less than 1 minute early.
And we're consistently right around 90% or above on our on time, which you want to provide some perspective on where that stacks up against what the average is.
Yeah, so fortunately, we have dipped a bit more recently. But when we first started the service, we were 95% and above, I would say, which is like almost unheard of for most bus routes. The target that's usually used is 85. And that's by time point. So routes usually only have 2 time points on them. But we had been consistently above 90. We have dipped below 90. I think we're working with disparities here.
What's the feedback then so far? Is it like direct feedback from the driver saying, 55 is unreal, or, just as an example, and I just can't make it? Or is it the driver that's not interested? I'm just asking.
I remember last time you said there were some mechanical issues with the bus, right?
Yeah, so starting in May, we had like several breakdowns of this vehicle, which really affects on time. Because usually what they have to do is send another vehicle from Cary to replace it. And so you essentially miss a trip when that happens, because the bus, they don't operate it. The operator's not comfortable operating it. So they bring the replacement bus, and there goes your on time, because you're basically a simple trip, which is 6 or 7 time. And then we did do a service change in June, so that brings in new operators on the route. And it also introduced new time points to the route. And at the time, they didn't have their access badges after hours for license restroom access, operators from the senior center restroom, which can potentially throw off the on time for that time point. And so it could be like a combination of factors. You don't need too many of them getting up over your own time first. So we're there've been less breakdowns lately. They have their badges now. You know, we're hoping that we're gonna be able to work with them here yet.
And it's probably too soon to tell how the Peakway construction and the domino effect of traffic that causes is going to affect this particular metric. All right, so there were a couple other questions sent out to the group. Yeah, this was the last one, best way to. I don't know who sent these in. They want to speak to them.
I sent the first one, but I don't really have any comments on it. Just kind of wish listing kind of thing, I guess, more than anything.
Yeah, mine was second. And we've talked about the need to do that.
And my comment to this was ridership, for the reasons we talked about. I think all of the discussions about additional services get easier with lots of riders.
I've been dwelling over the past couple slides. There's unfortunately the lack of knowledge about transit in Apex more than likely comes from the lack of need or the lack of just not desire. That's a nice way of putting it. Just, you know, if they don't need it or need to know about it, then they're not going to know how long it circulates. So I think a lot of the people that write it, you know, some of those I was talking, I don't know, it crossed my mind. Maybe we could do a campaign on the bus, whether it be a flyer to hand out, you know, tell your friend to ride, or, you know, send this QR code to your friend. Because I think that's where we're going to draw our ridership from. The people are the real advocates for it, the ones that care about it, the ones that use it, not the ones that are like, why does Apex have a transit route? This is a waste of money. They don't really care. So they're not going to be our advocates. That wasn't a rambling statement.
It was, and I get what you're saying, and I get that part of it. I do feel like the opinion in Apex about transit is leaning very heavily that way for people that don't engage in the service. But I can't get over the fact that, like, you don't have that same perception about, like, Parks and Rec, for example, like a baseball field. Very small percentage of Apex actively uses a baseball field at any given point in time, but everyone recognizes it as one of those things that you expect in a good community. And transit is very much the same, right? So it's really a question of how do you get people to view transit in that same light
As a service, as a something that the town provides that makes it a better community.
Yeah. That's maybe a discussion for another meeting. But it is after 5:30. I know we have a couple items left on the agenda here. Katie, you wanted to talk about the funding application status. Do you want to speak to that, or is that something maybe you can send along, or how do you want to handle it?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is we are still working towards our FY26 CFA applications. At this point, we are still moving towards submitting an application for increased frequency on Gary Route 1 for FY26. We talked to Go Gary. The earliest it could possibly happen is Q4 of 26. They have a lot of constraints right now that they're dealing with, and it's just not really feasible for them to do it any sooner than that.
Q4 calendar or FY26?
FY, so April of
27.
Oh, yeah, April of 26. April 26th, yeah.
April 26th.
That would be 4/20.
That's a year and a half.
Okay.
That's Q4 of FY 20.
Yeah. That's right.
2026.
Okay.
And we're still planning to put in an application for more bus stops. We did hear some feedback from the Task Council Planning Committee about the idea, and especially the comments that you all provided at the October meeting. Are you, for the,
The task force meeting?
next door?
Next
door.
You're fine.
About the idea of like whether we should be pursuing frequency or should we be a route to first, which are both expensive prospects in their own right. And we've been talking a little bit more about the timeline for making such improvements, and realistically, it's really a 2 to 3 year time frame to implement a route because of the capital costs of bus stops, of securing vehicles, which has been a sticking point with repairing and things like that. And so the idea is kind of let's work on both while we can, you know, because we prioritize Route 2 in the few years, so we can work about. And I don't know if you have any.
Yeah. I talked about our kind of conversation about the rider, cost per rider, and Harry said, I don't care about that. I just want riders. So that was his point of view. And so he was advocating do the frequency now and then do the additional route, you know, like do everything. He's kind of like that, you know, he's kind of like bullish on things, I would say. So we talked about like whether it would doubling the frequency, how much that would increase the ridership, and I don't think we know the exact answer to that, but yeah, and part of me is like, yeah, let's do this stuff, like let's do the higher frequency and get it going, and then do the next route. Maybe it'll all be at the same frequency and more like several 30-minute routes or 2 30-minute routes, whatever, however it'll end up. And it's kind of a step-by-step process, and because it takes so long, let's get it going.
It's a long time.
Yeah, that was kind of the point of view.
And we'll have another meeting before the application is due. January 31st. So.
Any other points of discussion, questions?
It was super helpful.
This is a great
Thank you.
meeting. Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you
know it's an
again.
extra for everybody. Thank you. Together.
All right. Well, only 5 minutes late though.